Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 5 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hello everyone, Happy New Year 2025. Welcome back to a brand new season of Global Rumblings. If you are new to the podcast, you have joined at an exciting time as the sanctuary in Brazil prepares to welcome its first African elephants. So without further ado, let's head over to Brazil to say hi to Kat and Scott. Hello you two, Happy New Year.
Do I always have to go first now?
Hello, it's a new year, it's supposed to go first. Hello, Nadia, Happy New Year to you too.
So tell us, Kat, did you burn the midnight oil? And Scott, did you fall asleep over a glass of red wine before midnight on New Year's Eve, or did something else happen?
Some things in life never change. So the answer, yes, Kat burned the midnight oil, and yes, Scott fell asleep.
I gave him a little kiss on the shoulder and said Happy New Year very quietly because he was already sleeping. He was kind of half awake for a second, but that was that.
Oh. Well, I would have liked to have been with you because at midnight, I was actually in bed before midnight, and then I got woken up with the rockets and all the really loud rockets. And yes, I thought I would have give anything to be in the quiet and the tranquility of the sanctuary. But yeah, so it was. It stopped after an hour and then I went to sleep. So yes, we are at exciting times. Kenya and Pupy, in our last episode, we talked about what you know and what you don't know about them. Kenya's crate had already arrived in Argentina at the Mendoza Eco Park. So give us some updates. Has Pupy's crate arrived?
Yes. Yeah, it was in Argentina. It got sort of stuck for 2 days, and then it made its way to the zoo, and then because of the holidays, the crane companies weren't available to actually put it into her enclosure. But at this point, it is in her enclosure, and she has access to it. And now that it is in her enclosure, they were able to officially start quarantine.
Ah, okay. So I wanted to talk about all that. We've talked a lot about permits. We're not going to do that because they're all done and dusted. We've talked about the actual logistics of getting the crate there and why you have to have, well, just little import permits for that, because the crate is actually a good that you have to import and export, that you don't pay taxes on it. But I've written down on my notes, what on earth is a trunk wash? And I know we said once that you draw blood from an elephant's ear because it's the thinnest part, if I remember correctly. But what other medical requirements do you have to do in order to get these lovely ladies to sanctuary?
Well, let's start off with the last part of that, the medical testing. This is all based on agricultural protection.
And it's government imposed. It's
right.
not our thing. It is a requirement by the government.
And I think we talked about this way back when discussing RAMA's permits, that when we first started working with the Agricultural Authority in Brazil, they came with a list of requirements that were needed before she could meet the sanitary requirements to be allowed to import and deemed a healthy animal and non-risk to agriculture. A lot of those things actually don't apply to elephants. The vast majority actually don't apply to what would be standard in elephants. But because they were trying to find some basis, there was things in there that really didn't make sense. So we had to go back and forth a few times to narrow down the requirements so they were somewhat logical. But we're left with a handful of tests that need to be done. Endoparasites, ectoparasites.
2 vaccinations.
We do rabies, tetanus vaccinations. testing for hoof and mouth disease. What
That's
else?
the blood test.
Yeah, blood testing. And
That's the blood test.
Right. So that blood test, actually, there has to be 2 of them, 21 days apart. One of the interesting elements of that is there has not been incidents of hoof and mouth disease in Argentina for
Decades.
so, but they still look at it as a risk. However, not a very minimal risk, but it is, we have to do the 2 blood tests 21 days apart. So
Since no one can see us except for Nadia, I am only filling in parts of his comments when he looks at me for the answer. I'm not just injecting myself into all of his sentences.
inject away. So,
We'll do a video podcast one day.
no, let's not.
No.
Be too self-conscious. So with that, the blood test 21 days apart, and that gets into one of your questions about where do you draw blood from. But before we do that, I think we need to talk about what it means to have elephants coming from these areas that have had no training at all.
And last part of the requirements is a trunk wash for a PCR for bovine TB, because they don't want their cows to get bovine TB.
And it's very, very rare to have bovine tuberculosis in elephants. I think it has been detected, but they have not been active, so they would not be a known carrier or a means to pass bovine tuberculosis. However, because tuberculosis does exist with elephants, that was put on the sanitary requirements also, and so they have to be negative for bovine TB.
Okay.
Which brings us back to the 2 tests, blood draw and trunk wash. Blood draw is actually generally easier a lot of times, depending on the elephant.
I was just going to say, depending upon the trainer and depending upon the elephant.
And sometimes with blood collection, you can do all the training in the world, you can do all the desensitization in the world, you can do all the poking and prodding with various needles, and when you have to use, you can sometimes use little baby tiny needles, like 25 gauge needles, and they do fine with that. And then you switch to, a 21 gauge needle, and they act like you're trying to cut their ear off. They just get really, not really that dramatic, but they will pull away. It's just a different sensation. And there's really...
Kenya all out leaves. She just doesn't pull away. She just...
Out of here.
So how is she doing? Because we mentioned in the last podcast that you were the vet was having difficulty as soon as there was another person there, because you said it's always ideal, obviously one vet prodding and poking and the other holding the trunk. So how is Kenya faring?
Well, I would rather not have a vet prodding and poking. It should just be one nice stick.
Yeah.
But she's doing better with 2 people, but still not super cooperative with the actual blood draw herself. Joanna and Marcos. Joanna, who was a vet at Buenos Aires and is still working with Foundation Franz Weber, and Marcos, who's one of our caregivers who used to work at Buenos Aires. They spent a couple of weeks together working with her, getting her used to 2 people. But at the end of it, when Marcos had to come back home, she still wasn't. She stayed for everything except for the poke, and then she moves. So we are trying to schedule both of them to go back. Joanna's actually supposed to go back in a couple of days. And we have to convince Augustina to let us steal her boyfriend again and send him to Argentina. So,
And to recap that, Augustina and Marcos used to work at Buenos Aires, and they both work here now. They're doing really, really well.
Okay.
So it means Augustina is living alone in Rio de Casca without Marcos for what was supposed to be just a few weeks last time, turned into almost 6. So we have to regain her trust and hope that she will trust that we will liberate him only for 3 weeks, and then she can come back. We'll see how all that goes. To go back on the blood draw, because I talked about the needle size, I can imagine people saying, well, why don't you just use the small needle? Because you damage the blood. You actually cause damage to the cells, which will nullify the results. So you have to use a proper size needle to get proper sample to get proper results.
And that was for the PCR test.
That is for
the blood draw.
hoof and mouth.
That's for hoof and mouth.
Oh, for foot and mouth. Okay.
So the other thing with that is you asked about taking blood from behind the ear. Generally, yes, it is an area, or you can do it at the front of the ear. They have a lot of different veins in their ears. Generally, it works really, really well. But you can also do a front leg vein, and also there's a back leg vein that sometimes works well as well. So with
Oh, even though the skin is so thick, that does work. Okay.
oh yeah,
Interesting.
it's not as thick as you think it is.
And most facilities don't do it. Most facilities won't do front leg because of safety risk.
Okay.
Back leg, there's also a different kind of safety risk, but is more used than front leg for sure. But it's almost everybody does ears.
We did Mara's back leg the other day, and she did really, really well with that. Mara's very sensitive to blood collection from her ears. She just is not comfortable with it, no matter what you do.
Which she's had before, and she's been good, but she just didn't seem like she was going to be down for it. So, we figured
did back leg, and she did great.
Yeah.
She didn't flinch at all. So it just depends on their comfort. We have seen the same thing with injections. Sometimes if you do, some elephants, you go to do an injection in the rump, they don't want it at all. But if you do it in their tricep or their shoulder where they can see you, they're great with it. And others don't want it in their shoulder or tricep. They'd rather it in the rump. So it just depends on the individual. A lot of times their comfort.
So would that be an option for Kenya then? Sorry, would that be an option for Kenya in the front? Because you mentioned last week that Marcos or Joanna had been practicing a foot present as well with Kenya, the front foot. Would that then be an option for her?
Yeah, that's the plan when they go back to see if they can, how long it's going to take to get her to do back foot presents and cooperate with that. And then if she can do that, seeing about trying to pull blood. Joanna is used to pulling blood from back leg vein because they've done it in Buenos Aires with their Africans and with Mara, so it's not a problem for her. And I only say that because it's a very different technique. When you do the ear, you're parallel almost to how the vein's running, and when you do the leg, you're almost perpendicular to the vein. It's like you almost just have to stick it straight in.
Yeah, it's almost like, if you look at when they draw blood from a human, the needle is coming at a very shallow angle to your arm. But if you are doing an injection on your body, it's almost perpendicular. And that's what it's like going into the leg vein. You have to go almost perpendicular to the vein, almost straight in. It's very strange.
But it's just much deeper. Ear veins are fairly superficial, but leg veins they're in there.
Yeah, and to go back to needles again, I don't want to keep harping on this, but, we've talked about sensitivity with elephants and how uniquely sensitive they are in different ways. And Maya, the first time we went to go do anything with her with a needle, I don't remember what the first injection was. She was shaking before we even did the first injection. Like you walk up with a needle and she was shaking. And she would not have had many injections in her life. But
no, they didn't provide her any medical care.
And maybe they did vaccines once in a while. I don't know. But they wouldn't have done very much with her. But you walk up with a needle and she was, literally shaking. And I was like, what is this, Maya? This is really strange. And that was the first time we did anything before we even tried to do blood draw. So sometimes they have these reactions that don't always make sense. Comforts and discomforts that don't always make sense. So trying to work through that. And part of the challenge with Kenya is the limited facility. So she has a doorway that's about 2 meters wide, approximately. And so she has enough, if we have photos of it, we might be able to include, is you can see where her position is when she has her trunk and, her trunk in the front and then her ear presenting out. Now, if you imagine for her to turn around and put her back leg to that, there's no space for the trainer to then reinforce. You have to throw food past her body until it gets to her nose and hope that it lands in a place that doesn't walk her away from the training wall to positively reinforce, because there's no position for the person to get into here because it's solid walls on both sides. So it makes it really, really challenging. It's very limiting from the trainer perspective, and that's part of the issue with Tammy there as well. As we saw with Pushy and Gujamina, very, very limited options for the training process.
And the trunk wash, what's that? Keep on. I've got that song "Car Wash" on my head now.
Don't sing it.
Okay, I'll try not to.
The trunk wash is. Do you want to take trunk wash?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
We had some wild parakeets visiting our captive, injured parakeets, and cat has been dealing with parakeet screaming parties all morning. So now that it's quiet, the cat's brain is also quiet. But it's a little bit intense.
I can hear some
earlier.
Screeching or some squeaking in the back.
Oh, that's nothing. Those are little finches. Those is not like
I see.
the parakeet party. No,
No, you wouldn't be able to hear us, barely.
It's like they come in with machine guns. They're really loud. We'll try to do a recording for you at some point. It's really entertaining.
Hopefully not today. It's been hours. They need to be done.
So we have trunk wash. Trunk wash is trying to collect a sputum sample from the elephant's nasal passage that will hopefully have whatever cells in there, positive, if she does have the bacteria and she is shedding the disease, cells in there that actually grow or test positive for tuberculosis.
What they're looking for with the PCR identifies genetic material. So they're hoping to get some sort of epithelials in the saline sample that they can test and then check to see if there
And how
is
does
any
it actually
genetic
work?
material.
How does it actually work? Do you draws water up into her nose? And
No,
then...
you have to use a small amount, and surprisingly enough, an elephant can take up to 15, 20 liters of water in their nose, but if you try to put 60 mLs, they act like you are drowning them sometimes. The whole training process is if you can get their nose still, put 60 mLs of solution in their nose. They lift their nose up to get that solution to wash up and down their nose, and then they bring it back down and they put their nose into a black plastic bag and they blow, forcefully exhale out.
That is how that's supposed to work.
How does that work? I mean, how do you get them to do that?
It doesn't a lot of times.
It's entertaining because sometimes elephants start blowing right away.
Sometimes they just drink the saline.
Yes.
Sometimes they bathe in the saline. I mean, there's so many things that can
In
go
all
wrong.
60 mils of it.
And sometimes
my
they just keep their
God.
nose in the air and they stay there for a while and then they bring it back down. So again, you can do all the training in the world, and sometimes they have a mind on their own when they know you're actually collecting the sample, because that samples also have to be collected while the authorities are there. And elephants love to play games this way.
Yeah.
And it's like they will be awesome, often perfect with all of it. You have done the whole process over and over and over again. Nothing changes except for a different audience, and they decide to blow the air and blow the water into the air, or they decide to drink or whatever it is. So it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
Bunny just loved an elephant in Tennessee. She loved the blowing part so much that as soon as you were trying to put it in, she's like blowing it out already. It's like, not yet, Bunny. And she's like all ready for the final step. It's like you have to go through the whole process first. So before it even hits her nose, it's becoming aerated and a little fountain.
The blowing thing is interesting because essentially when you're trying to train them for it, you have to capture the behavior. I mean, clearly you can't ask them to just blow and have them blow. They don't know what it is. So you have to wait, essentially, or create a scenario where they do it naturally and then you bridge them. So for people who do clicker training with dogs, you would click as she's blowing, reward her, and have to do that multiple times for her to connect the dots of, oh, when I blow, clearly it's what she wants for some obscene reason, and I get a treat, so cool. We don't use clickers because we need our hands. We just whistle. Okay. But it's the same concept. So you have to capture the behavior to train them for that behavior, and then you have some elephants that really, really want to blow and will blow the bag off, and it's entertaining.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't like the bag being put over their nose, so you have them blow back into a bucket. And sometimes that doesn't work with an elephant who loves to blow forcefully also. So it's, you train blow, and then you have to just like blow easily. So it's a lot of nuance with training for those behaviors.
So the quarantine period then starts after these tests have been done, although you said the blood draw has to have 21 days in between it. So does the quarantine start, then trunk wash and blood draw, and then the quarantine goes, and then those final trunk wash and blood draw at the end again? Or how exactly does this 30-day work?
The quarantine has actually officially started. There's no.
He looked at me. I just didn't say anything.
The quarantine is a minimum of 30 days, but it can be longer. There's no real issue. There's the only parameters that you're controlling the environment, who comes in, who goes. There's different sanitary requirements for the caregivers in that space as they come and go in and out of quarantine zone, but there's no set absolute time for the quarantine period. Using Mara as the example, because her quarantine started, and then after her quarantine started, COVID came along. So there was delays with that, but they just kept with the same quarantine protocol. Within that quarantine period, you have to do these tests. So quarantine has officially started. Now that it's officially started, when there's this time frame, they will start doing the vaccinations. They will do...
And all of those, every step of it has to be observed by somebody from the agricultural agency to make sure that it's really, really, really done.
And they will do the first blood draw, hopefully next week. And then 21 days later, they will do the next blood draw.
It has to be at least 21 days, so it can be 25, whatever.
And then a couple of weeks after that, you'll have results. And then as soon as you have the results, then we are clear to go.
Yeah, so that will be hopefully then sometime mid-February. Something like
That's
that.
our hope, but we are we're not.
That's the loose plan.
We're not too excited about that date. We'll just have to see how it goes.
We'll get all listeners, please send out positive vibes to Kenya so that she either presents her ear in the right manner, doesn't walk off, and or presents her back foot to Joanna the vet. And when I actually said poking and prodding just now, obviously I didn't mean with a needle all the time. I meant the desensitization you talking about, pinching and sort of, I don't want to, obviously, I can imagine a human sort of sitting there while a nurse is trying to, well, everyone has to start and practice, but maybe not on an elephant. So yes, we're running out of time. I can't believe it. Episode number 50 has, it started and has already finished nearly. So before we run out of time, and you've got a busy schedule, I'd like to just catch up a little bit on all your wildlife rehab or on the wildlife rehab program, because over the last month I read that the fluffy owls are more feathery now and have already, I think, been released. Junior, the anteater, he's gone. I think his mum was still there and you had other anteaters. So tell us about all your fluffy and furry rehab animals. How are they doing?
They are lovely. Let's see. Mom is coming and going at this point.
Good.
So usually see her sometimes once a day, sometimes every other day. So she's starting to explore and gain more confidence on her own. Anthony, who was one of the males, he was released last week.
One of the anteaters for new listeners. We were all talking about the anteaters.
Yeah, the giant anteater. He's the one that actually came in with the medium, the other little anteater who was released, I don't know, a couple of months ago at this point.
Oh, the arboreal one.
Yeah. Yeah, they're ready for release sooner. And he had an intestinal parasite that was taking a while to get resolved. And he finally got rid of it. So we were like, go, go, go. So he was released down by the creek.
There's actually a cute little video of him walking down the road and turning into the creek. And he loves the water, loves the water. So I thought we really enjoyed it back there.
Yeah.
And so, Mum, the anteater, because you think that she was knocked down or knocked over by a car, is she better then? Because you said that you thought that she was maybe partially blind or was...
She may not have full vision, but their vision is fairly terrible. You know, if they pop up a video, they have the tiniest little eyeballs. I mean, they rely so much more on smell than anything else.
Okay.
So, I mean, if her vision isn't perfect, you know, we don't live in a city. We don't have to worry about neighbors. We don't have to worry about cars. You know, we don't have to worry about anything like that.
We don't have hunters in the area.
No. With their home range, they shouldn't leave the property at all. I mean, and even if they did, our neighbors on both ends of us are lovely, and we released one of the burrowing owls over on one of our neighbors' properties. I mean, it's not an issue. So when she was put into a newer area, she navigated it really well. She didn't bump into anything. She didn't seem uncomfortable. So she can definitely... It seems like she can see.
We're doing some construction on that whole area a few weeks ago, and she came into the construction zone, which everything had changed from the last time she was there, which was the night before, with a bunch of temporary fencing and some obstacles that were still on the ground, and she navigated those incredibly well, walking quickly. You know, she just immediately showed us that she knew how to make her way around. So it gave us a lot more comfort with proceeding with those next steps.
Yeah.
So
And then you had some barn owls. Sorry?
Barn owls are gone, except for one. The one we thought was not going to be releasable, he is not releasable. So we're talking to another facility in a different state who has another unreleasable barn owl about them taking him because we don't want him to be by himself. He loved his 6 pseudo-siblings that he was with, so... We have him. The hawk just left yesterday.
You had a hawk.
Yeah, the hawk came in not that long ago. He just needed a little bit of time to gain more strength. He had a questionable issue with his foot, the way he was holding his foot when he first came. Possibility of having, a developmental disease or impact from his early diet, but he seemed to do really, really well. Was flying exceptionally well, and he is now free as of yesterday.
Who else do we have? We still have Mom. We have Anina, the younger giant anteater, who definitely has maybe a month or so left before we can consider letting her go. And then...
We had a really fun one. If we have time, we had a tapir that arrived. This was actually really cool. For those that remember, we have a tapir named Pushy. When Pushy first came, she was with somebody else.
/Sassy.
Sassy. She was with another, and she's both Pushy and Sassy. She was with. She arrived with Alma, and she was very disrespectful of Alma's personal needs,
which is where she got her name from.
And so she's been released for a number of years now. Earlier this year, she came back with her second offspring.
Yeah, we won't see her for like 8 months or so. She's not like a normal, but she showed up and we were like, I think she's pregnant. And then she showed up a few weeks later and we're like, she's definitely pregnant. And then she showed up probably a couple of months later with her baby.
Yeah. Aww. So that was really nice to see. And then so we received another tapir, a young tapir, about almost the same age as her offspring, a little bit younger maybe. And her offspring is still staying with her. And after the first night of the new tapir being here, we saw a bunch of footprints all around the enclosure. So we decided to go ahead and put the camera trap up. And we have images from her spending the entire night, 7 hours, next to his enclosure, including trying to bite the fence, including trying to bite his little nose and lick his little nose. And he was actually jumping up on the fence, trying to climb over a little bit. And Pushy stayed there, and there's some parts of the video of her laying down near the fence, and he laid down on his side of the fence.
He finally gave up. He was really cute. He was such a child. He threw himself on the ground because he couldn't get out. He was like, oh, forget it, going to sleep.
Yeah, so that was really cool to see. So then I think it was even the next day, 2 days later, we did not have the camera trap up that night. We arrived in the morning, and somebody said, we are missing a tapir. So we went and looked, and Pushy had destroyed the fence, completely destroyed, opened up like a meter-wide hole in the fence that had previously contained tapirs.
She's over 500 pounds. I mean, she's an adult-sized,
oh my gosh,
big ball of muscle, 500 pounds.
A large lady.
We have not seen him walking with her directly, but we have seen him in the periphery of her and her baby. So she apparently is still keeping him under her wing and showing him the ropes of what it means to be a wild tapir, and apparently doing pretty well.
The reality is she could do a better job than we ever could. We were talking to Tomas, who actually, with the Buenos Aires Zoo, they were doing reintegration with tapirs, so they've worked with them, blah, blah, blah. And he said they're not supposed to have that sort of maternal thing where they would take somebody else's and raise somebody else's baby, because it's common in certain species. I mean, it happens all the time. Yeah. They're not supposed to be like that, but clearly she said, you're wrong. I would like your baby, so I am going to steal him. And she did.
And the closest we saw was a few weeks ago when Trish arrived. Pushy and her baby were relatively close to the office, and we could see Bobbitle, the other one, off to the side, off in the shadows. So hopefully he's still hanging out with her, and she's still showing her 2 new offspring what it means to be.
I mean, technically, he could survive on his own if she decided she was disinterested, but I highly doubt that. She is a very, very good mom. I mean, the baby she has now doesn't really need to be with her at this point, but they still stay together, so She's a good mom.
Oh.
So a lot of successful
good.
relocations, a lot of successful releases
Yeah.
as of the last few weeks. So it's very exciting. Nice to see.
So, and you've obviously got a nice, Pushy is a nice stepmom. So next time a tapir comes, you shall maybe come across and just take them off your hands, so you've got more time to feed elephants. Talking of
We
which,
need to
yeah,
make sure that the fence is a little stronger, just in case they need a little more TLC and a little bit of care. Because the reality is, if he did need more care, we wouldn't be able to do anything in that state. So we are actually already in the process of rebuilding a lot of that wildlife enclosure. So hopefully we'll make this one pushy-proof.
I don't know that there is such a thing. Just like there's not truly anything that's absolutely elephant proof. I don't know that you can make something pushy proof, but
could be a good new patent, Pushy proof. That's a nice name. Let's patent that name. Okay, I'll let you go. Time's running out before we get cut off. Yeah, have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm sure it's the same procedure as every afternoon, elephant feeding, etc. And we'll catch up and then in 2 weeks' time for our next recording, and hopefully, some more news. Hopefully a positive blood draw from Kenya.
Let's hope. We should hear, hopefully this week, we'll hear from about Puppies. And then Kenya, I think it's a few more days before Joanna goes back there, but hopefully good news to follow.
Okay, great. Well, I know that there will surely be posts on your social media accounts, on X, on your blog, on Facebook. You'll find all that information in the show notes. Not you two, of course, our listeners. So, thank you for your time today. And we'll catch up in 2 weeks' time. And until then, take care, you two.
Good night. Take care of you too.
bye.
Bye. That's all that we have time for this week. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Another great zero-cost way to support us is by leaving a 5-star rating or a glowing review, as this helps other people discover the podcast. Thank you so much. And until we meet up in 2 weeks' time, take care.